Good morning. It's going to be an interesting sail today, 45 miles, taking us around places we haven't been to before. The first run is actually straightforward and we follow the line of this island. It's a long, thin island and we can literally run all the way up its east side. So this is the outermost of these islands before going back out to the Java Sea. One thing that I hadn't anticipated are the number of fishing platforms. I think previously I'd called these FADs, fish attraction devices, and by definition they're not FADs, they are platforms. The good thing is that they are stilted, so they are secured to the seabed. Previously we've seen platforms which are secured by lines, so when you go past them you have to take into account the tide as to which way those lines are stretching. Hopefully today what you see is what you get. Now interestingly, last time we came up here 5 years ago, we went down the west side of this island. And very, very pretty, but it was rather chaotic. Lots of overfalls, lots of very narrow channels. And at one point I had the worst encounter of almost running aground we've ever had. We were motor sailing and went towards a patch that our navionics said minimum 10 metres at chart datum. Well, as we approached it, the depth dropped from 20 metres to 5 metres in a matter of seconds, and I could see the reef underneath. And you have never seen anyone put a boat into a stern so quickly. And that kind of shook me up a bit because there are not many settlements here. There are the few odd fishing settlements and that's about it. And if something were to happen around here, you're kind of on your own. I mean, the good thing is, of course, is that we're in shallow enough waters that we can literally anchor anywhere. This whole bay, if you look behind me, this one here, all of that, that's all anchorable. It's anchorable here as well. And of course, those southerly trades that have come up the Java Sea, you can see that they have kind of got broken up, so they're not as big, which is great. I'm expecting lots of currents today though, and I have no idea what these currents are going to do or where they're going to come from. I've just seen various annotations warning us of them. So, but in the meantime, we're just enjoying this long, straight run, jib and jigger, and hitting 5 knots, which is, as far as I'm concerned, that's acceptable because I haven't had my coffee yet. Earlier we were watching skiffs driving around in between each platform and picking up the fishermen that have been spending the night on them. We passed one quite close and the fisherman was standing on the steps and a skiff came along and pulled up and took him back. I just find it interesting because what we saw of the communities here, they are, how can we say, well, they're pretty basic. We were anchored opposite one. It appeared to have lots of buildings, but by the time the sun went down there was literally one light on. It just got me thinking that I guess a lot of these communities are specifically for working on these fishing platforms. So they go out at sundown, they spend the night fishing, and then in the morning they're picked up and I guess they're taken back to their community where they sleep during the day. And that is literally their existence. That is all that they do, because there is nothing else here, as far as I can tell anyway. The communities are based entirely around this industry, and as we can see, as I look out behind the camera, out to sea, continue these platforms, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of them. But yeah, what an existence, eh? Are they happy? Do they know any different? Maybe they're well looked after, they eat well with a great fish and rice diet, and that's all they want. Who knows? Don't know.
Just looking on here, it shows us where this rain is coming from, which is over there, coming across us. So we needed to put the pole away, put the staysail out, and the mizzen is fine. So water, but not too much wind. Despite the ominous-looking satellite images, this was a baby squall, nothing compared to what we've been through recently. Our destination for today's trip is an island called Titapan, a place we've been to before. It's sheltered between islets and reefs and offers protection from any wind, as well as swell and currents. This is another of our favourite anchorages. With nothing but nature's beauty, the occasional jumping fish, and soft bird song from shore, it's easy to sit back and admire the scenery while a fisherman passes by, giving a friendly wave. We didn't leave the boat because we are now checked out of Indonesia and as such are a yacht in transit. This means we mustn't take the dinghy ashore or visit the fishing village. Still, with no commercial traffic and the protection of the mangroves, it makes for a comfortable overnight stop in flat water in a picturesque seascape. The next leg required some consideration. As our last stop in Indonesia, the island of Kapala Jernih would be our launch point to cross the Singapore Strait. But from Titapan, we're talking 60 nautical miles away. We knew this area is prone to strong currents, and with the southeast wind still blowing, there were few places to shelter between the 2 points. We finally decided to aim for Rano Island, which would shave off 11 miles from the passage.
I do love that last anchorage. It's a shame that we've already checked out because what I wanted to do was to get the kayaks in the water and go for a little cruise around the mangroves, but officially we're not allowed to do that. So we are adhering to the rules and pushing on. Now, I was expecting currents, but I was also expecting wind. So we've got the currents. The currents around here are really strong. The boat's having to deviate by a good 30 odd degrees to maintain its course. And in fact, we had 2.1 knots against us. So I've actually altered course and cut through some islands in order to gain the advantage of that current. But also forecast, we're supposed to be a good 15 knots of wind, and we're getting 5 if we're lucky. So we're having to motor this next bit. Just got a couple of sails out for stability. And really, this is the second from last leg we're going to be doing. The next one is going to take us to a little island, which is just south of the actual shipping lane. And that's going to be our launch point. We got this one from Ollie on Windara, who recommended this and recommended that actually we go under the shipping channel, stay on the Indonesian side and go all the way up the west side of the shipping lane before crossing over. But before that, we have these legs to do. So today is only going to be 11 miles because tomorrow's one is going to be through reefs, rocks, islands, with possibly counter currents as well. So we are going to have to leave early and give ourselves plenty of time in order to get to our anchorage at daylight. I've seen notes and annotations warning of lots of fishing stakes and so on. So we obviously want to avoid that. We don't want to be coming in late afternoon or dusk with those kind of hazards around. This is our last full day in Indonesia. This is the last leg we're doing up to the Singapore Strait. Another early start. Nothing particularly exciting to report. We're just going through a massive anchorage. This whole area is a dedicated anchorage for commercial vessels. One thing we haven't really talked about is piracy. It's a known thing in this part of the world, and especially in the area we're going to. If you were to look at a nautical chart of the Singapore Strait and you look in the sort of on the west side, there's a huge area in open sea which is actually an anchorage, and that's where a lot of the attacks happening. Our planned anchorage for tonight is going to be opposite that. So I think we'll be keeping lights to a minimum when we anchor for the night, and then next morning the plan is to go around down the bottom of the shipping lane and follow it up on the west side. The other thing we're struggling with, this one's for you guys, is internet connection. The internet around here isn't very good. We had no internet at the last anchorage, and we're desperately trying to get up our next episode. And I just hope that Liz has enough to be able to make the thumbnails and for the video to upload. I set it to start uploading last night, and this morning, 12 hours later, it had done 15%. So there we go. Those are the kind of pains we go through to get these videos uploaded, to adhere to our weekly schedule. Well, Liz is down below trying to get that next episode done. Meanwhile, I thought I'd get some exercise in. Got a bit bored just jib and jiggering at, well, we dropped down to 3 knots. I looked at the forecast, and actually, if you check the forecast in the area behind me, it's all blowing 15 knots. But up this channel, just over to the east, 12 knots maximum. And I'm not seeing that at all. I'm seeing 5 or 6. So I thought I would get the old SVGG configuration out. If you remember, that is all sails out, main poled on the leeward side, and the head sail on the windward side, and the staysail on the leeward side as well, just to sort of funnel that wind, keep the boat a bit more balanced. And we've gone up from 3 to 4.5 knots, so worth the effort. I think I'm going to know this configuration as the SVGG configuration from here on in, so thank you once again, Steve, for highlighting this excellent sail plan, which is just so easy to set up, but just provides that little bit of extra balance to the boat. So very happy with that. It's only about 8 in the morning and I'm exhausted. By the way, there is one thing I should mention. You may have noticed in our footage that quite often when I put the head sail out, I'll leave a wrap in the head sail. I'll show you right now as I walk up to the boat. There's a reason for this. This is just a historical habit. There we go, so there's one wrap there. Now this is because some years ago we used to get halyard wrap, and in fact when we first got halyard wrap all those years ago, I didn't even know what the problem was. I had to learn about halyard wrap. This is where the halyard that holds up the top of the sail wraps around the furler when you try and furl it away or unfurl it. Of course, it's all about tensioning the halyard, but also about getting the right angle at which it comes out of the mast. You can buy various mast fittings that put the angle of the halyard at the correct angle to prevent this wrap. So yeah, it's just a habit that I got into, where what I found was that by leaving one wrap in the head sail, it would prevent halyard wrap. Now, we don't really get halyard wrap anymore. I shouldn't say that too soon, because who knows when it's next going to happen. But there isn't really a need to keep that furl in there, but it's just a habit that I've got into. I mean, one furl, you might get a little bit of extra sail out, but it just gives me a little bit of peace of mind.
With variable but light winds, Jamie's workout continued. As we entered the second half of our 50-mile passage, it made more sense to use the kraken, and approaching the final leg of our journey, the currents increased in our favour. We were hitting 8 knots, just under the code 0. There was some tricky navigation to tend to on the corner of the last stretch, sailing Esper between sandbars, but we finally made our anchorage with just half an hour of sunlight to spare. We are anchored right opposite the Singapore Strait, aren't we? That's it, there behind me over my shoulder. And it's quite late, 20 past 5. Will be dark in an hour. I'm really looking forward and hoping that all these great big boats that we can see going back and forth, they're all going to be lit up, and it should be quite spectacular tonight to lie here and just watch them go past. So this is it. This is the end of Indonesia for us. Tomorrow we'll be heading towards Klang, I believe. Is that right? Is that what you decided? So tomorrow we'll be going to cross the Singapore Strait, and tonight we're going to get a nice rest, take it easy, so we're ready for the big one tomorrow.
All credit to Ollie of Windara. This was his suggestion. It's not in No Foreign Land, it's not on Navionics, but he suggested it. It's a bay surrounded by mangrove, but there's a big V-shaped reef, so we've tucked right inside as far as we can get in just 5 metres. We're surrounded by fishermen fishing stakes, and as Liz says, we've got Singapore. We can actually see Singapore, we can see the skyscrapers, and we can hear the low rumbling of the ships passing by. The theory, Ollie's theory, is that it is easier to cross the strait further round on the Indonesian side towards the west, because at this point where we're sitting right now, there are lots of side channels that allow cross traffic into and out of Singapore, and that's quite often what causes a lot of the headaches. So already from what I can see here, it looks a lot less congested than it does further east, which is where we've crossed it in the past.